Hello, I'm Paul Ferrace, president of the USS Cod Submarine Memorial, and I'm looking at you down the barrel of our 5-inch 25 caliber wet mount main deck gun. Let's talk about shooting things with something other than torpedoes. Let's do that outside of this crap barrel. Thanks, man. Here we are out on deck, and boy, I'll tell you, it was a little cramped in that barrel, but it's nice to know that I'm not so big that I can't fit in a barrel like Ryan did on his giant 16-inch rifles on New Jersey. Try it with this, buddy. Anyway, we're out on deck, and this is our 7-ton Mark 40 5-inch gun, and it's according to the manual, it's single-purpose. Ben, what does that mean?
Well, single purpose, it's either for anti-aircraft or anti-ship, compared to traditional naval weapons that are dual purpose for both targeting ships and aircraft. So with this being single purpose, its only purpose being to optimize for shooting naval ships rather than aircraft.
I have an aircraft I'd like to shoot at right now, but we can't do it with this gun, and submarines don't engage airplanes, they dive, so keep that in mind. But you know, because it's a single-purpose surface engagement, maybe some of these crotch rocket motorcycles would like a little taste of our steel. But anyway, it's an 8-man gun. What are 8 guys doing? Well, let's come around here. 2 people are actually on the gun. Now, one person handles deflection, left or right. It's a given. Ben, on your side, what are we doing?
On this side, you're elevating the weapon.
All right. Now, that's 2. There is a gun captain. Now, come on over here. The gun captain stands behind the guy who's in charge of elevation. And there's an important reason why. On a pitching and rolling deck like a submarine, deflection, left and right, isn't as important as elevation. So you want to hit the target. That is why the man who is in charge of elevation has the main deck gun trigger, and the trigger is this inboard foot pedal that fires the gun, and of course you want to catch that trigger just as the gun is coming down on the target. But if the gun captain, who stands behind him, and he even has his own little open air sight, if he thinks that the timing is going to be wrong, he's going to yell override. And this is the gun captain's override trigger right here, okay? Now, we've got some great footage of Cod's gun in action. But that's the firing aspect. Let's talk about the loading, because that's what the other 5 guys are doing. You've seen before in a previous program, we talked about our ready service ammunition stowage. So let's turn around over here. You have 10 ready service rounds in this pressure-proof locker right here. So when you surface for a gun action, the first guys coming up from the after battery hatch are some are coming over here to spin the locker open, some are unlimbering the gun, some are opening the ammo scuttle here. The first rounds are coming out, they're going to be fired through the gun from here. By the time you're 5 rounds in, hopefully this is open and you're being able to feed ammunition from the ship's magazine down beneath the crew's mess deck. But those shells come in steel cases, and again, we might be able to get some nice vintage footage. The shells are fixed, so it's the shell, the projectile, and the powder case combined. Not like our friends on the destroyers where the shells and the powder cases are separate. Here it's fixed ammunition, but it weighs 74 pounds. So you pull it out of the metal case, the case comes up, pull it out of the case, throw the case away, even though the Navy wants you to save it, but in wartime they didn't. So you have 5 guys to pass that shell. One decants, one will pass it off to the next guy, and then the guy throwing it in, and it's a spring-loaded block. You shove it in, and as the edge of the case catches these two tabs, the breech block automatically shoots up. And then he hits the safe lever right here. So now the gun is primed, ready to fire, either from that main trigger, as I said earlier, or the gun captain's override. The gun itself is called a wet mount because it's made out of stainless steel and other non-corrosive alloys, despite a little bit of rust, you see. So you didn't have to plug the breech and the muzzle up when you dove, and you didn't have to undo those when you surfaced. That saves some valuable time. Although the water in the barrel is going to cause the first couple of rounds to go crazy, I'm told. But you know, even when you had the traditional earlier guns that had a breech and a muzzle lock, the first couple of rounds weren't going anywhere near the target then either, I'm told. But it's a beautiful gun. The design is based on a long tradition of 5-inch guns, but this is not the 5-inch anti-aircraft guns that were on cruisers and battleships and aircraft carriers before the war. That is a whole different gun. It weighs probably 2, maybe 3 times what this gun weighs, 7 tons. Those guns are designed both for surface and air engagements, and of course had to have fuse setters and everything. We don't worry about that. We do have range setters. Now the fire control was pretty simple. It's down these optical sights, although after some experience in combat, they devised some gun laying system where you would get range and deflection from your periscopes or your TBTs, and they were able to feed that range information through a talker. So of course you also had a guy out here with his headphones and a talker. By the way, one of the 8 men was supposed to be wearing asbestos gloves, and his job was to catch the hot brass case as it rockets out after the gun is fired. And it comes back about 22 inches in recoil when this is fired. His job is to catch the shell, and we can stow that in the empty steel case for later recycling. But of course, like the shell cases themselves, those shell cases either shot out overboard, and if they didn't shoot out over the side of the deck, the crew would kick them. And of course, Evan, with his editing magic, is going to include some great footage of some of our gun crew on our last patrol disposing of some spent cases over the side with a good kick from their sandaled feet. Let's talk about some of the gun sights. Now, in World War II, these were fitted with a singular monocular telescope about yay long, which was good, a very good 6-power magnification, but it was monocular, so you're kind of squinting down a tube. After the war, they improve it by taking the Mark 91 pressure-proof binoculars from the TBT and adapting them as gun sights for the 5-inch gun. So what we have here is the post-war version with the gun sights, the binocular gun sights, Mark 90 or 91. Come on around here, we'll talk about this. Now, we keep our caps open year-round, but of course, for long-term stowage or when you're not having use, they should be closed. But if you're looking down the sun sector, you can open up these little tabs, and in essence you have dark sun filters so that you can look down downrange into the sun at targets. Of course, normally you keep this wide open for the full effect. And you can adjust the interocular spacing for the comfort of the person using it. Now, on ours, we have just the open air reticle illuminator button right here. It's a prism that captures light, but there is a light bulb accessory that fits over this, and will light up the reticle in dim light so that you can use that. But we have those, they're stowed right now. People have a tendency to play too much with this, so we keep it simple so that people don't have any way of damaging that. There's also a brow guard that can fit. We don't keep the brow guards on there because UV degradation. We've got a problem. One of the things is people tend to flip these open and closed, and this is a curator gripe session. If you look in here, come on back with that macro feature. There are little brass shims. These are friction shims that keep the lens caps open. But I've noticed on some of our sister subs that have these, if they're opening and closing constantly, that wears down and they'll droop. And we don't like that. So to minimize wear and tear, we ask people not to open and close the lens caps, and we leave them open all the time. So what kind of ammunition? Well, you had high capacity, you had armor piercing, and you also could carry, late in the war when it was available, the VT, variable timing, the radar proximity fused ammunition. Now, as we said, this is a single purpose gun. You don't use that for aircraft, but if you're engaging a small auxiliary enemy combatant, and you want to render his gun crew inoperative, you would fire a proximity fuse set to go low, pass over the ship. The radar fuse would detonate the shell, and you would kill his gun crew immediately, and then you would have free reign to punch all the holes you wanted in his hull. Again, you're not going to do that with a destroyer or a frigate, but a small coastal defense ship that were pressed into service late in the war, that would have been certainly something that would have been done by our 5-inch wet mount gun crews. So now, since Cod is a Gato class boat, a Lake Gato, the door that was built into the back of the conning tower, and if you want to hear a little bit about that door, go back and find the program we did about the door that never was on Cod. But the earlier fleet boats, the crew would rush out of the back of the conning tower through a door at the aft end of the conning tower itself. So you had to elbow your way through the captain at the periscope and the fire control party and rush out onto the deck to man your gun. That was a problem in combat. So the Baleos and Tench class boats had a separate gun trunk on the forward port corner of the control room, so they could run up through with their own escape trunk out on deck. But we didn't have that because we're among the last of the Gatos. So the gun crew had to use the after battery hatch, which we have right here. It's a little less freeboard than, say, the gun trunk, but I don't think all that much. So here's your gun access for those 8 men. And of course, when the gun action was done, they would want you to stow the gun with the travel lock. Let's go back and Ben, let's get that travel lock up. Now the barrel is counter shaded, by the way, for camouflage. So if you're looking down from the air, you're going to see black on black. This is just something to keep the gun from swinging side to side. And that, of course, is stowed nice and proper. I will tell you a little secret. Looking at photographs and movie films of our gun in World War II, this is a replica travel lock, or if you're British, a gun crutch. Ours opens to starboard. The one on Cod in World War II opened to port. So at some point, we need to get down there, pull some cotter pins, and flip this around. You want to put that on the honey-do list for spring?
I can do that.
Okay. So late in the war, deck guns are very important because we're shooting more at small craft that aren't worth a torpedo. How many junks did we sink on that 7th Patrol?
It was about over a dozen.
Yeah, I think it was closer to 2 dozen. I think maybe 26 junks on that last patrol. So this gun certainly got a workout. And there's that beautiful stainless steel barrel. Again, I can fit down in this because I've been skipping some trips at the dive locker. But the challenge stands. Ryan, see if you can come down our barrel, or maybe get Libby to do that. Anyway, that's pretty much the Navy's, our quick take on the Navy Mark 40 5-inch wet mount deck gun. It's introduced late in 44 to replace the 4-inch 50 long barrel modified surface ship gun. It came off of 4 Piper destroyers of World War I. They modified it for use on submarines with a muzzle plug and a breech cover. And you can see, we'll include a photo of that weapon. Those were generally mounted forward. The 5-inch guns were mounted after the sail or conning tower because we're often running for deep water where we have to shoot at the bad guys. Early in the war, they thought that gun actions might supplant torpedoes, so the guns were mounted forward. Some boats decided to keep their 5-inch, their newly acquired 5 inches forward, like USS Cod. They had a 5-inch in service. They kept it forward of their conning tower. Hopefully someday we can find a 5-inch 25 for Cobia so they can get rid of that 3-inch 50 they've got sitting forward from a minesweeper. But anyway, that's all we're going to talk about 5-inchers today. So remember, hit the like, subscribe, notification bell, and we'll be back for more. Thanks.